Man, these crackers are loud.
This podcast sponsored by Keebler's. Keebler's for when soup is just not good enough.
I've become a there must be a word for this, but I'm just going to call it a Trader Joe ho, because all my favorite things are now from Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe ho. You and I need to create that t-shirt. We'll each walk into a Trader Joe's wearing it and just see what the reaction is and be like, oh my God, is that a thing? Are we selling those? Like, well, we're selling them. You want one?
I want them as our number one sponsor, because I will just sponsor this stuff. I'll be like, these Pita Bite crackers and a Spindrift sparkling water really refresh me.
Do you know what I like? Their cowboy bark. Have you ever had that?
I believe so.
Oh God.
Is that the one that's like, yeah, the chocolate bark?
It's like the remains of other candies and cookies all combined. Remember back in college, you ever have the situation where you go to college and they would take, like, on Fridays and Saturdays, they would take like whatever breakfast cereal was left and like make like a Rice Krispie bar out of it and serve it as dessert during the dinner session. Like, it kind of feels like that, but it's so good. It's like, well, we had some leftover almonds and some marshmallows and some dark chocolate and some regular chocolate and shit. Let's just make some kind of random, we won't even make like a bar shape. We'll just kind of throw it in a big thing and chop it up.
I think that's what's so amazing about so much Trader Joe's food is I feel like they just made it that day.
Yeah.
Like when I'll find a salad I like, I'm like, oh, you guys just threw together this salad that you knew I would like. And then, you know, the next time I'm in there, I see the exact same salad and I go, oh wait, you have a recipe for this? Like, I feel so like,
yeah,
there is no Santa Claus.
Yeah.
That kind of moment. Anyway, hello and welcome to the Todd and Taylor show. Taylor was unaware that I was recording all of that.
That's okay.
I'm Todd A. And
I'm Taylor Trask.
Yeah, I think we're giddy with anticipation of launching some new ideas and stuff that we keep teasing in a very uncool teasing way. Like, we have given no information about that, but next week we will. That's our plan, right? Next week we will,
and that's because there's just simply is so much to share, and we're still kind of under the gun to get it all done. That way we can just talk about it when it is done, and then you will be like, oh wow, and you'll have things to look at and see and everything. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun and interesting, and then I'll have a very long weekend preparing. Let's just put it that way.
And while you're preparing and while everyone else is waiting, can I suggest having a Spindrift raspberry lime sparkling water and some Trader Joe's multigrain Pita Bite crackers with whole wheat and flax seeds?
Wow, Todd, that sounds amazing. Where can I get those?
Trader Joe's again.
Trader Joe's? Why,
yeah.
Is that my local neighborhood grocery store that's different from Whole Foods or others?
It is. Yeah, and in a little while, I'll tell you the other thing that I eat during every single podcast is I have a ritual of going to Trader Joe's and getting these dark chocolate covered mints or mint covered dark chocolates or something. But at the checkout aisle, I always have to like scope out which checkout aisle has them, and then
you know what though? They have mastered the art of the checkout aisle. Like, every time you pull up to that thing, you're just like, God, you got to fight temptation to get through that thing without picking up one more thing from the checkout aisle. And you're right. They mix it up too. So you're like, shoot, I want to be in this checkout aisle because it's got these things, you know, these raspberry cream, whatever. It's all like junk food essentially, but it's so good. I don't think they sell like they don't sell apple chips in the check. Well, maybe they do. Maybe there are.
No,
mango.
They'll sell anything. One of my local ones has this drives me crazy because every time I've got like a full basket, I get up there and they have like a half gallon of iced tea and lemonade, like an Arnold Palmer already made. And every time I'm like, I want that so bad, but it's huge. And I know I've already got one heavy bag of stuff here, and I'm a bachelor, so more than one grocery bag is too much for me. That's too much shopping.
It'd be awesome if this episode is just us listing our favorite shit from Trader Joe's. Just, you know.
Yeah. We did that before I said hello, so yeah. No need to continue with that. We are wrapping up season 2 of the Todd and Taylor show. At least that's kind of how we look at it. Mm-hmm. We're going to put a button on the whole thing. And last week, Taylor told me he just had a list of topics to talk about. So I thought I would.
If you listened last week too, we kind of went all over the place. So it's
it was good in that way.
And it was kind of fun. I remember listening back to it, going, "This is actually kind of one of my more favorite podcasts," just because it's simply so random.
Well, and I think we do sometimes. I mean, we haven't done it lately because season one for sure. We would start with this outline, and
Yeah.
I think sometimes it was like we felt like we had to hit every bullet on it. So we would have the same kind of rambling discussion, but there would be these awkward maybe segues where we thought, well, we talked about Game of Thrones for 30 minutes, but we got to also talk about Captain America because it was on the outline or something.
And we'd be like, welcome to hour 3 of the Todd and Taylor Show.
Yeah.
During this break, we'll be talking about, Captain America and the Blair Witch Project. But speaking of, are you at all excited? And we'll get to your thing in a second, I promise. But are you at all excited about the Blair Witch sequel?
Not at all.
Not at all.
could not care less. I mean, they made sequels.
They made one shitty sequel. This is like the true sequel. You can almost forget that one. This is like the X-Men Days of Future Past that corrects the mistakes of the Blair Witch sequel. Yeah. It's. I'm actually, well, I'll say this. I'm excited only because it wasn't the first found footage movie, but it's kind of the godfather of the modern found footage movie. It's sort of teed that.
Oh yeah.
Up in a major way that we've seen unfold over the last 16 years. So to see them go back to it in kind of an organic way that ties the story together, I'm curious. I might go check it out. Anyway,
it was also the grandfather of amazing viral websites because
yes,
I believe we've mentioned that before. But the web was so primitive in like 2000 when that happened, and I was enwrapped by that website. Like I just remember being like, "Is this a real thing? I mean, this is crazy."
Yeah.
And my girlfriend at the time, I remember I saw the movie with my girlfriend and her mom, somehow they literally like walked out thinking it was found footage.
Like for real. Well,
I mean, I know that sounds so crazy because we're all adults.
They put it out like in August of '99. Like late August. So when school started,
it was 99. Okay.
I came back to school for my senior year and everybody's just like, oh my God, have you seen Blair Witch? It's real. And like, there was like that 2 or 3 weeks. And then didn't Newsweek cover it like it was real? So there was some major publication or CNN or somebody did a story about it as though it were real. And I think that was all just like a backroom deal or something like to help the viral campaign. But that just threw more fuel on the fire to the point where they actually had to come out in an interview and say, no, this is fake. This is just, part of our campaign. And because they're like, wow, you're brilliant. But there was like a period of time where everybody went. And then there was, because I saw it after they were like, no, it's fake. And I still found it kind of unsettling at the time, but I can't imagine seeing it, thinking it might be real, thinking.
And I think that was the problem is they didn't go into it thinking it was real. It was just that it looked so real that they were like, they doubted themselves as they came out. Like, I can't remember if there's a card at the end that says, this was fiction or something. And I don't remember how they play it off at the end. But, I just remember both of them being like, oh, my God, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And, as I was talking to him, it became apparent, like, they thought it was real.
And you got a friend of mine made a great point, too. They're like, there is something a little bit suspect about going into a movie theater,
right?
See a bunch of people die and disappear, for money. And I'm like, well, there's that. But I don't know. I think we didn't have YouTube at the time. Like we didn't have all these trappings of entertainment today that would have, like that. If it were real, that would have just wound up on YouTube today. So I'm wondering. Right. That all said, I'm wondering. I haven't even paid attention. Is there any kind of campaign or, obviously they just sort of dropped it at Comic-Con sight unseen. And
as far as I understand, and I'm speaking out of a huge place of ignorance here, but I thought when I read the announcement at Comic-Con, what I thought was surprising about that was everyone knew there was this movie under development, and the crazy announcement was this is the sequel to Blair Witch. Like, people had heard of this horror movie that they were making, and no one had any details. So then when they revealed it's the sequel to Blair Witch, I think that was sort of the way they got around it. Like, shock, like that's our shocking move. So
could you imagine if they hadn't announced it that way and they just started leaking clips on YouTube, like, because the whole conceit is that the brother of the girl from the first one thinks she's still alive and is trying to find her. So wouldn't it be amazing if all of a sudden you just started seeing these like videos pop up on YouTube and like maybe leading up to Comic-Con and then they I mean, just something to take advantage of because I was reading one thing too, and they were like, the reason we're doing it now, because Lionsgate has the rights to it, the reason we're doing it now is because we have drones and we have cell phone footage and Bluetooth cameras. So like the technology lets us tell the story beyond just the simple one shaky cam. Like we can actually get a bunch of coverage that feels organic. And we can do all these like cool things. I'm like, well, that's interesting, but why not take advantage? You sort of birthed the viral marketing campaign in its modern form. Like, why not take advantage of that for this one? I mean, maybe it's at that point, it's
probably,
like,
yeah,
we've seen it.
I wonder. Well,
maybe maybe there's some cool thing, and I'm just haven't paid attention.
And I haven't either. That's what I was about to say. Yeah, I wouldn't have even known. It wouldn't have like sort of hit my radar, I don't think.
Yeah. Anyway, what's up with you? It's not Blair Witch related.
Well, I've seen a bunch of movies this week.
Ooh, really?
Not in the theater. But I saw a movie that you mentioned in a podcast of ours earlier, which was Interstellar. And I watched it on an 11-inch Chromebook, as I'm sure Christopher Nolan was hoping with you. I mean, why else did he shoot it on 70 millimeter film?
Of course.
I mean, his film stock is like as big as the screen I watched it on. But anyway, so yeah, this came up. I can't remember exactly which episode, and I'm sorry I didn't go back and look for it, but I know that I saw the trailer to Dunkirk in front of Suicide Squad. So it may be in our episode where we mentioned Suicide Squad, which is we didn't title Suicide Squad. One of us will look that up as the other one is talking and confirm. But it was really just a quick comment that you made, which I think was that you were kind of let down by Interstellar. And then we both sort of chimed in, and I said, well, I didn't see it. But I understand that, like, sort of, after the Batman trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, as I would generally refer to it, and then Inception, it was kind of like, man, he again tried to sort of raise the stakes for himself, which, Kabbalah monster bless him for doing that, but that's a hard thing to top, Inception.
Well, so yeah.
I thought. Now, my main problem with it is I know I didn't want to just do an airing of grievances nor a full review of this movie that's now 2 years old, 3 years old.
Is it? Oh, wow, it is. Isn't
it's it? 2. It's 2 at least. But I did there was a moment where I maybe I had to pause the film. Like, I think I'd started it in just in blind faith. Like, I'm just going to watch this tonight. That's what I'm doing. And then realized, like, I had to pause it. Because I'm in my home and got up to do whatever, and when I paused it, realized, oh my God, it's 3 hours long.
Yeah. I think that was my first problem against it too. Was like, oh.
So that's really where what I thought might be fodder for a conversation is, I kept racking my brain, and I had sort of a chat going on with some friends because they asked what I thought about it, and where I was saying, like, well, what can you cut out of this thing to make it a little bit tighter? Because there were parts where, I mean, there were parts where I was so emotionally invested, and there were parts where I was so, like, technically amazed, and there were parts where I was just loving the, like, fun of the space travel. But I did feel, I guess, like, man, Christopher Nolan tried to make a movie that is all of these things perfectly,
Yeah.
And because of that, it's just too long. But it's like, I mean, but when you look at other pieces of garbage that have been made, complaining about that seems so petty.
Yeah. You could almost count Christopher Nolan as one of the last great filmmakers, in the traditional sense. I would argue that, the guys who made Stranger Things are every bit as good as he is. They just have a mastery over the 8 to 10 hour format that he hasn't delved into. I mean, if Nolan were to do a series, and his brother's actually getting that chance with Westworld.
That's Nolan's brother?
It's Jonathan Nolan and J.J. Abrams, so get ready. It's going to be by the way, the trailer for that, the newest trailer for that came out, and holy shit,
I have not watched it, but I did receive your tweet the other day.
It's well, there's 2 now. There's like one that's like, ooh, and now there's a new one that's kind of not disturbing, but you can kind of remember all those casting rumors that came out, like what they were like looking for. I can kind of see why that description was so graphic. I was like, okay, this is going to be Anthony
Right.
Hopkins and a lot of naked robots apparently running around at some point. Anyway, but Christopher Nolan, he's Wally Pfizer was his director of photography
DP.
for everything up to I think up into not including Interstellar. So everything we saw up to that point. Wally Pfizer then went off and directed Transcendence, that Johnny Depp movie, which sounded badass, had a really cool trailer, but was just utter meh. And I feel like Interstellar and Transcendence were almost like the lesser of two wholes, right? Or the lesser of one whole. Like I feel like those two guys separating like they did went off and did mediocre work compared to their previous body of work. And
don't you think that's a little unfair? Or maybe I should state that in another way. Were there things about the photography and the cinematography in Interstellar that you thought were lacking because
I felt it looked I'm so used to Wally Pfizer's shooting style. Like you watch Inception and you can see how Inception was made by the same team that made The Prestige or Batman Begins. Like there's just something about the way he frames shots, and Interstellar kept a lot of that visual vocabulary, but you could tell something was off about it. And I think that's what it was. I'm not saying Wally Pfizer had anything to do with the script or the editing or any of that, but I don't know. I feel like we're in this mode now where Nolan and his core team have now gone, they're drifting off. They all have other aspirations. So he's going off with kind of a reformed version of his team. It's like when Prince and the Revolution broke up, right? Like Prince went on and did great things, but it didn't quite measure up to just the level of awesome that he and the Revolution had together.
I don't know. Have you ever heard this band, The Wings?
Well,
man, they did so much better things than those Beatles.
Oh, well, if you really want to be technical, the Wings actually sold more albums than the Beatles did, if I remember that correctly.
That cannot be right.
I heard that and I was like, no. And it was like during a time when somebody was telling me that I had really good trivia, and I was like, okay. Anywho, so I don't know. I think Interstellar, like I loved, and this is we're gonna spoilers if you haven't seen it. I liked the idea of Matthew McConaughey's character not aging while his daughter was back on Earth, getting older. Like I liked that. I wanted to see more about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to spoil it because I really want to talk about like what would you cut to make a better movie, because to me it's better than I'm just trying to think like anything. I mean, almost any other
I would cut,
like Gravity. Gravity is a good example. I didn't really like Gravity, but
how have we not discussed this?
Oh well, God. But I don't think it's like I can't. I just wasn't into it. I was kind of like the concept of it kind of bothered me, and
okay. So here's
stuff like that. But
it's a great
comparison. But I'm saying like, so I would say Interstellar is still better than that. I guess that's not a good one. So we're not going to agree on it.
I wouldn't go that way because Gravity was set up to be. Gravity was more of a thriller in my mind.
Yeah.
Interstellar was more of a plotting drama. And
but I think you're getting, that's one of the points there is what is Interstellar? And one of the things I said, like, is it a drama? Is it a thriller? Is it a scientific, like hard sci-fi, like we talked about in our Martian podcast
or just year. Our what is sci-fi podcast? I think that was
because that exactly what you said is exactly it. Like you can easily say Gravity was a thriller and it's in that genre and it fits there.
The thing about Gravity though, the visuals, the breathtaking visuals aside, because Alfonso Cuarón is a goddamn genius when it comes to anything visual. The story was set up with beats, like you can almost take the story beats, put them out on a line, and you'll see like every 5 minutes there is something to pull you back in, something to pull you back in, something to pull you back in. So it's like her journey, Sandra Bullock's journey. It's like you're start to finish, there's not a chance for you to really slow down. I mean, there's kind of one at one point, but that's simply to let you catch your breath, but it's just relentless. Whereas Interstellar, it takes a while to kind of get going. And it takes a while. Like I would cut a lot of the beginning and I think
you hit on something huge there, which is the story beats thing.
Yeah.
Because that would be so hard to do with Interstellar. This is a real beat of the story.
You know what it is? I just summed it up in my mind. Interstellar would have worked way better as a 5-part series instead of a 3-hour movie. Like, if they wanted to do all the things they wanted to
Right.
do, great. Then let's have an entire hour episode of just them on Earth
Film
before
2 more hours and then have a five-part miniseries.
that. I feel like that would have fit that way, and we would have hailed it as like the next genius series from HBO or Netflix or whoever. Like, I feel like that would have been perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we have to look at. Oh, go ahead.
Well, your story beats comments is resonating with me so much because one of the things I brought up to my friends in the group text when they were asking me about it was I would have cut. I just sort of, it was sort of flippant, but I said I would have cut that scene where they come off the water planet.
Yep.
And they catch up on all their messages from home.
Yep.
And it's like Matthew McConaughey sits there and cries in a very uncomfortable way as he's watching his kids get older in all of these messages, like for way too long to me.
Yeah.
Because, but what you said about the beat is exactly right. It's like, it's almost like that's an example of telling and not showing, because we hadn't gone back to Earth to watch them age at all. It's like we're getting the information the same time as McConaughey does, but we're not the kids' parents. So to us, it's like, well, this is just weird. We're watching a montage of these people grow up.
Yeah. I mean, part of me almost kind of wishes we didn't see her age until he actually gets back on Earth.
Ooh,
and then like he meets her. Like, that would have been cool, because then we as the characters are in the same. We as the viewers, he as the character, are on the same page. We're seeing her at the same time. But it's like, that would have been, I don't know, there would have been something more. But it's no wonder that scene is endlessly memed, right? I mean, like, that's, and no one even has to do anything. They just have to say Matthew McConaughey's reaction from seeing the Star Wars trailer for the first time. Matthew McConaughey's reaction from seeing blah, 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 blah. And then just show that scene. It's like, it's literally set up to kind of be lampooned.
Right. Yeah. And it's, oh man, it's all coming together here. Why didn't all?
I mean, again, let's go back to what you said. Compared to other things, it's fantastic. I just think we have come to expect. Christopher Nolan has kind of set himself up to be. It's going to be impossible for him to compete with himself, because he has done so much good stuff. Even going back to, I mean, starting with Memento. As like his first kind of mainstream release. He did like an indie movie before that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Following, Memento, which is on Netflix right now, I believe.
Is it really?
Yep.
We should have to go watch that. So yeah, Memento, and then that one Robin Williams movie with Al Pacino. Whatever that was good too, though. And then everything down the line, like, and I will always be, The Prestige, I'll always hold up as like one of his greatest, like that. Even it's 10-year anniversary, I think, next month. And that movie still freaking holds up like it's brand new. I mean, that
Insomnia, by the way.
Insomnia, yeah. So it's like he's put out all these freaking amazing things. And say what you will about the last Batman movie, I thought it was still pretty strong. So it's like, for him to go back to an original thing, and I think when he did original things, it was The Prestige, which he adapted as a book, and then Inception, which was completely original. So I think everybody was kind of expecting, like, blow us away again. Him like, okay, and here's this. And he, it looks great. It does its things, but I think we're so used to just being, it's like Apple. It's like, we want the next big innovation. Come on. And, when they don't deliver that, we're like, oh yeah, you failed us. You failed us. And it's like, still better than the market. You're like, you failed us,
Right. Are we judging him by, unfair standards? But on the other hand, they're the standards that he set. So it kind of feels like,
on the Nolanian curve of quality, he has, this is probably so. All this to be said too. I have not yet seen the Dunkirk trailer because I was kind of hoping I would have caught it in the theater, and I don't really want to see it online. But if that's as good as everybody's saying, I think that might be that next thing that's like, holy crap, like that's that, because it's not something you'd expect from him to do, like kind of a historical thing. It's more of a Steven Spielberg kind of move, So for him to go,
and
we'll do that.
And if you look at the Batman superhero movies as essentially fantasy or sci-fi in some way, then he's done nothing but sci-fi for
you're right.
15 years. So, I mean, Prestige, Interstellar, Inception, all of these have an element of sci-fi or fantasy or something in them. And so, if he's doing something that's just gritty and, real, I think that's going to be intense.
Well, and he's good at it. I mean, Insomnia is a detective movie, essentially, that's I mean, I loved it. I remember seeing it in the theater. That was part of Robin Williams' like dark trilogy. You know, that if you count Death to Smoochie, which I do, because he played like the bad guy in that. He played a sort of, you know, 1,000 Shades of Grey character in Insomnia, and then he was the flat out creepy villain in 1 Hour Photo, if you remember that movie. Like that was a great year to be a Robin Williams fan, because you're like, Jesus, you get to see like a lot of range from one guy over the course of 3 movies. Because they all came out the same year too. I think it was Smoochie first, then 1 Hour Photo, then Insomnia. If I recall, I might be completely wrong about the timing of that. But so what other movies did you watch besides Interstellar?
Oh, we're done with Interstellar?
Well,
okay.
I mean, I'm just so curious. We can come back to it, but I'm curious what else you watch, because now I'm like, well, shoot, what else does he not like that I'm gonna have to try to defend? Somehow.
Oh no, I mean, you know, not that I don't think we're tearing away from Interstellar. I like all those points.
No, I mean Gravity.
They all help.
Saying you don't like
they
Gravity.
all help the movie. Yeah, they all help the movie make sense to me. The Interstellar, you know, story beats, what kind of genre it was in. Yeah, these are all, I don't know, they're all important things. Plus, I love that it touches on our favorite subject, which is like, how do you tell a story? Do you tell it over several episodes on Netflix that all come out at the same time, or do you know? Yeah. So the next movie has nothing like that to talk about. It's a documentary that just appeared on Netflix about a week ago. It's a CNN film called Holy Hell.
Yes, I watched that too. Yes.
Oh, good. Yes. So this is about a group of people in Los Angeles.
For those of you at home, real quick, for those of you at home, this is the documentary that has the really creepy face staring at you from the cover art. So if you're flipping through Netflix, like, Jesus, what is that? It's this.
You know that creepy guy that's in the cult?
He's got like eyes that follow you. It's like literally one of those like paintings of the eyes that follow you around the room. That's this documentary.
One of the most dead-eyed stares you've ever seen, and it is a real person. Yep. But yeah, so it follows a cult called the Buddha Field, which was in Los Angeles in the 80s. And so there's so many shocking elements to this, and I'm so glad you saw it, because I was going to start to compare it to like Going Clear or something. But and I think we can talk about Holy Hell without spoiling anything. But one of the really interesting elements of it is that almost all the footage, I mean, the vast majority, like 95% of the footage, unless it's like news footage or something, comes from a filmmaker who was in the cult, and filming it like for posterity. He was like the filmmaker of the cult. So it's creepy in a way where they're like, you know, where you're just seeing what he was seeing, you know, and the people are variously performing for the camera or being real or whatever. But that was a very jarring experience. You weren't watching people. You know, they did have post interviews, so the story is told by him narrating it, and his sisters who are also in the cult, and then some other former members who are all out. So it does cut to present day interviews to tell that story.
And those are shot. I actually look at the credits. They have a kind of an Alex Gibney-esque sort of framing, you know. So they kind of he did a good job in making it feel like a contemporary documentary, even though there is so much historical footage. So yeah, that was Alex Gibney did not deal with, you know, have anything to do with this, but it was interesting. I didn't realize his sisters were in it. I totally missed
those two main women that are interviewed are his sisters.
The filmmaker sisters.
Correct.
Not the leaders or whatever what did they call him? They had a name for him. It was
they did call him the leader, I believe.
Or the master. Was it the master or something? It was something creepy and cultish.
It was. So what, I mean, like, there are a lot of cults, I think, because of the way this was told through all that footage on the inside and the cuts to them in present day is, well, for starters, it doesn't tell a story of a cult that was like around for like 4 years or 5 years or 10 years. This is like 20 years of footage. And so as you're watching this stuff sort of start to disintegrate, and there's not a lot of that from the historical footage, because, you know, they didn't want him to shoot, and he was in the cult, so he wasn't like shooting really embarrassing stuff or you know, when things were going wrong. But more than any other cult documentary I've seen, which is quite a few, I think I've gone, how the hell did you not know you were in a cult? You know?
Well, so
And
I'm glad you thought that.
did you get that impression too?
No, yes-ish, and I mean, you always kind of, once you start to see the crazy really take in, you're always like, "Huh, oh, God." But at first, I can kind of see why some of these people got sucked in, and they were very deliberate to say, in the beginning, it was very much like it was all about, Deepak Chopra, like improve your life, and we're here to. This is just
Right.
there wasn't a belief system right out of the gate so much as
True. And it's actually kind of weird to call it a cult because it's really a cult of personality.
Which it became as it went along, right? Like I feel like in the beginning, and who knows, but it may have even been the guy who started it may have even had, more less delusions of grandeur, more just like, yeah, I want to kind of start a cool thing. Like I don't think he went into it L. Ron Hubbard style saying, I'm going to make a lot of money duping people into thinking this is all like some religion. Like it was like, yeah, I just kind of want to hang out with people and we'll smoke some grass and talk about life and it'll just be like, it'll be cool. It'll be like a little hangout, like a hippie commune.
Well, and you're right. That is all totally correct and valid. I guess where that comes from is, when it's easy in those years where they're just kind of hanging out together, but there's a point where they all start kind of living for that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the one thing that sticks out is this guy that makes the fruit salad, and he makes these like sculptures of fruit salad, and then he finds out that the leader is not even eating them because he's just like he starts making them because the leader's like, that's what I want for breakfast, bring me fresh fruit. Mm-hmm. So he starts sculpting them in these elaborate pieces, and then he finds out later that the leader's decided he doesn't, he wants granola for breakfast or something, so he's not he's not eating the fruit. And he's like, and I felt so sad, but then I realized like this is my joy making it for him, and I'm like, no, you're in a fucking cult. Like, what is wrong with you?
Well, that's just it. Like, it was cool to see how sort of a loosely affiliated group of people end up living together on a proper commune, end up having jobs, and like their economic security is tied to this thing. Then when that flip happens where the guy who started it all of a sudden becomes, it turns into that inevitable cult of personality where he's walking around there carrying a throne for him. And like, they're saying, but even early on, if I'm not mistaken, like they were talking about like, he would look at you and you would just, you were loved. There was like a lot of that kind of just, they sort of propped him up even early on. Like, like he was way more, and I don't know, it was weird to see because it was much less, it was a much softer sell than a lot of these sort of cult-like organizations that we've seen from other documentaries. Going Clear obviously being sort of the grand example of them all, but there was very much a soft sell. Not saying I would have fallen for it, but I can kind of see how some of these people got caught up in it.
I get it, and you used a word that I don't think they even used in the film, which is commune. At least I don't remember them discussing it that way, and I think that's one of those other weird anachronisms where I guess in my brain, I did feel that like at the early years, like, oh yeah, they're living in a commune. But the thing is, this happens in the like middle 80s. Mm-hmm. That whole commune notion, that sort of 60s vibe of the free love, like, weirdly named commune thing, mm-hmm. that was 20 years out of date.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it feels so anachronistic that like in the 80s when people had like cable news.
Yeah.
Well, and then of course we learn as viewers that there's a turn that happens in the documentary where everything becomes really dark. But we learn as viewers that for the people in the group, that happened really early on. Like there is some abuse going on. Mm-hmm. They just in the dramatic telling of it in the documentary, they don't reveal it till midway through or something.
Later on, yeah. One, the guy who joined was, I think he's like in the mid 80s. He joined. He only left in 2007. So the internet, everything had kind of come into being while he was still in the group, mm-hmm. And just for those of you at home who haven't seen it, the guy who started is named Mitchell Rostand. And it really is, if you have any fascination in sort of just the inner sociologist in me gets animated every time I watch these things, because I'm just like, oh man, like I love studying groupthink and, sort of cult of personality and why. I mean, like you and I have talked offline a lot about, like, we have a mutual appreciation for all these like North Korea, vice guides to North Korea, and just understanding like how an entire country can be enraptured by, one guy essentially, or one family. So it's like when you see these little like breakoffs of that happen in America, it's like, you're just like, who are the people that get into this? Why do they get into this? Why do they ultimately sort of abandon sensibility for the sake of one guy or one girl or woman? It's like, what is that? So the thing that really struck me, where it kind of plays like, you're like, okay, it has like the signposts of a typical cult documentary. Where it got really crazy was when they started producing the like really expensive ballets that only they saw.
Oh my God.
That's where because I was watching, being like, I was interested, but I got really on board with this thing when they're like, so the guy Michelle who started it was like either a wannabe ballet dancer, or had tried or failed or something. And of course, this thing got started in LA, where a lot of freaking cults get started for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. That's another project for another day. But he wanted to get started. And so like a lot of the people who were in the cult were like actors or dancers or very attractive people. I think Rachel pointed out at one point.
Yeah. They talk about that in the documentary too. Like there are a lot of people that were sort of in the orbit of the group who would say, yeah, we knew them because they were all these attractive people that, were always together.
And we're always like, they had either failed at being actors or had just not put in the time or just were tired of that. So Michelle would choreograph, and I'm still not sure where they got the money to do this. That's the other thing too. It wasn't like this was a big organization. This was a pretty small group, right? Maybe like, I would say 50 to 100 people, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think it grew over that. It wasn't. That's one of the other, marks of it not being one of those scary cults. It wasn't like a corporatized cult. Like it was like, no, this is what sustains us. But that was the thing they didn't talk about. How did they get money? You knew all those people were working and giving their money back to the cult.
Yeah.
Or back to their family or whatever you want to call it.
And so, but they would go and produce, like he would write and direct and choreograph these ridiculously huge ballets that had like, Broadway level sets. And they
would rehearse for a year.
Yeah. They'd rehearse them for a year, and then they'd perform them only for themselves. And I'm like,
once,
and they would film them. And it's like, what? Like, and the fact that they wouldn't even like, and the other thing too is Michelle commissioned like an entire theater to be built. A really nice one too, that only they, again, 50 to 100 people performed and attended this theater. So you'd think at one point they'd open that up for like summer stock or something, like, sell tickets and actually generate some income, but that never happened. So I was just, that idea was really bizarre and intriguing, and it's still
I know
a question mark in my head.
When they say that line about we would only perform them once, I honestly, that I think I felt like an enormous amount of respect for them. I was like, holy shit, you concentrated on one creative project for an entire year. You performed it once perfectly, and that was it. Like that is the most amazing. Oh my God, that's like the sand mandala or whatever that is it the Buddhists, that the monks that make these ornate sand mandalas or whatever that just get blown away. It takes them weeks to make them.
Which, if you've seen House of Cards season 3, you'll have seen that, by the way.
Oh, really? No.
Yeah, that appears.
I have seen season 3, but I don't remember that.
That's in the White House. Frank walks by, and like there's a whole episode where it's funny, they show the passage of time by them working on that thing, and I never knew those existed. I was like, what is this? And
you brought up one point about what you said, the inner sociologist wants to know why people join these things. You also mentioned the Los Angeles thing, which is always interesting because it's definitely like a city of seekers, in Los Angeles to some degree, and fringe spirituality is all around. But I think that ultimately that's one of the reasons that I feel like even when I enjoy a documentary about a subject like this, I feel a disconnect, or I feel that like that puzzlement in my head of like, why would you do this? Because they don't explain the why well enough. Because to me, I mean, if anything, I was more of a punk at 19 than I am now.
Mhm.
And if somebody were like, hey, come live with us, and there's this really attractive guy and he'll take you out into the woods and give you the secret to all essence of being or whatever, I'd be like, nah, fuck you. I got like better things to do. Like, I just don't, there'd be no part of me at 19 that would go, I remember being 22 or 3 or something, and this guy telling me like that he like in this very empathetic way was trying to tell me like Scientology is a really scary thing, and I fell into it for a while, and at 23 I was like, how are you so fucking stupid that you fell into that? Like, because it's like, dude, I don't know what that is, because they didn't really explain that moment of like, if there's some human weakness, that we've all felt, like there's some moment where we're reaching out for something, but I didn't get it enough.
In this documentary, no. I mean, one of the beauties of Going Clear is
I think you're right.
They get into that a lot, because you see, especially a lot of those early people, they talk about why L. Ron Hubbard had such a hold on them and like what it was. And I think they use that to juxtapose that, what was going through their heads then with what was going through their heads when they finally got out. And then they kind of look at the sum of their life, like, how did that, they're just as baffled as we are. Like, how did we allow that to happen? Like, so this one, that was the one thing that was missing, was just that sort of rationale. But I do think it kind of goes back to a lot of those people were in the original group, and it's kind of started off very nonchalantly. Just, hey, we're hanging out with this guy and it's kind of fun, and we're going to the woods on camping trips, and we're all kind of hippies, and it just sort of escalated from there once he got crazy, or maybe he was always crazy and he showed that. But
yeah. And so then the most terrifying part of it is that it's really, really close to the end when you realize, after they've confronted this leader about all his abuse and everything, they don't do anything about it. They don't go to the police.
When you say abuse, we mean sexual abuse, by the way.
Yes. Of all the men.
Yeah.
The leader was raping all of the men.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, right? Like, there weren't women there were women who suffered emotional abuse, but not the physical, I believe.
That's as far as like, it was, and it was weird too. They spend all this time like building the story of what happened in the cult. And then like at the very end, they're like, oh, and by the way, he raped all of us. And so they kind of just info dump on you. And it was kind of hard for me to catch up on, like, well, wait, what? And so
it was really like every 15, 20 minutes or so of the documentary, I would go, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, they took some hard left turns a lot.
Yeah, it kept, like, it would sort of go along in one direction, and then you would learn this new information, and it would really freak me out. Yeah. And so then the last thing that really freaks me out is they basically tell the guy, we're all leaving, you go away, because he was running to escape some other law problems that he had. And they were like, you go do your thing, but don't start this up again. And they find out he's got a new group, and they're in Hawaii. Yeah. And they go, and they don't even really confront them. That was another kind of weird letdown. But anyway, that was another part where the whole tone of the movie shifted for me, and I didn't know what I was watching. I felt really icky about it, because it felt like all the other stuff, they they had permission to use that footage. I mean, the guy that shot it owned it and was putting it together with the other people who escaped. There were probably never any legal arrangements for that. And then they do a real like undercover sting kind of thing where they've got the hidden cameras, and they go confront this guy in Hawaii, but nothing comes of the confrontation.
Yeah.
It was very unsatisfying and very creepy to end it that way. And I'm sorry that I've now discussed that and spoiled that part of it, but I really think there's so much more information. Like Taylor said, there's like this big info dump that comes at the end that it just like it's like my eyes just bulged out of my head, like, what?
It's still worth a watch, even knowing all that, because once you see the theater they built, and we're not talking like, oh, they built like a little stage on the forest. No, they built like $8 million compound, like an actual theater with a professional stage, with like professional Broadway sets, like that only they ever saw and attended. That's the weirdest. Like, once you get to that part, you're just like, what? I think that was in Austin when they did Austin, Texas, or somewhere. They were in Austin for a little while.
They had to flee Los Angeles, and I don't remember why they had to flee Los Angeles. But whenever they would do that, the filmmaker was sort of the right hand man of the leader, and they would always go scout a place out and then bring everyone. And that was another that was one of those moments where I'm like, guys, just don't go to Austin. I mean, obviously he's nuts. And the whole group waits for the word, and then they all move to Austin.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So definitely, I don't know. I will continually be. Yeah, holy hell. That's a great. The title alone was. I was like, what is this? The title and the creepy face.
There was another documentary very similar called The Source Family.
Yes,
which was on Netflix for a while.
Yeah,
and that was the one, Los Angeles 2. And one of the weird things about that group was that they had a band that was this crazy psychedelic music, and they made all these records and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they just have this like legend of this, of being this totally insane psychedelic band. And I don't think it's streaming on Netflix any longer, but if you happen to have the old DVD service, I think it's still there. And that one's definitely worth checking out as well. I've been racking my brain to think of other cult documentaries that I've seen, because I know I've seen a lot. Going Clear, of course, and
there was one, and maybe it was on YouTube. There was this one about this like Mormon, like the extreme
about the FLDS.
Yeah, but it's like the extreme version where you can marry like 20 women and all that kind of stuff. They were living in a compound in.
Well, Vice has done a couple of these, I think.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, because I fell down the rabbit hole of Vice after their North Korea stuff. Oh, do you know the one that I'm really interested in? And this is less, I guess you could call it a cult. It's kind of in that weird, and in fact, I thought about this when I was watching Holy Hell. Vice has this thing where one of their guys goes to Siberia, and there's this group of people living in kind of like this, Smurf village of sorts. And there's this guy, there is this former Russian like soldier who kind of looks like Jesus, who I think renamed himself like Victorian or something like that, Vissarion. And he's living in Siberia, and they've got these people who are just moving there, slowly building up this little town that all kind of worship him as like the new Jesus. And this guy from Vice goes, and he kind of ingratiates himself, with this community. And then they had like their version of Easter. So he actually got an interview with Victorian. And so you get to see, and it was very much that Vice angle of we're not gonna take a heavy hand here. We're not gonna take a critical angle. We're just gonna simply show you what we're seeing. So they did this whole thing, but that's still on Vice. I think that's been a few years now. But that thing, it was weird. That reminded me a lot of Holy Hell, in that it's still in that kind of innocent mode. But if that guy gets an ego, or if that guy starts laying down the law, it's gonna go south really fast.
Right.
And you get all these people living and working in this sort of like this commune, but they were all so happy, and they're all like, we're really happy to be here, and it's so peaceful. And even the guy from Vice was kind of, he in his narration, he's like, I could see myself living here, if properly motivated. And I'm like, Jesus. But
exactly.
Yeah, check that one out. What is that one called? Vice.
It is called Jesus of Siberia.
Yes, thank you. Jesus.
And his name is Vissarion.
Vissarion, yeah. It's weird, man. And you could tell, like, you just watch it when they finally get the interview with that guy at the end. You're watching him, and you're just like, man, I don't think this guy thinks he's Jesus. I think this guy thinks he's engineering the situation for his own benefit, which is scary, because in that, at some point, he's going to turn on the whole, I need to have sex with your children, or whatever creepy weird angle comes into that. That's just, then Vice will have to go back and be like, the tragedy of whatever the town is called. I forget what they named the town something. I mean, who knows? But it's like you fall down that rabbit hole, and you're just like, oh, go ahead.
No, I agree with that rabbit hole. I was going to say, when I watch too many of those, though, I inevitably think of the Simpsons episode where they follow the leader and they all join the cult.
That's right. Is that the one where Homer like has like the private interstate or the private highway that they like and they sing the song like, who does this? We do. Like, and Steve Guttenberg's part of the cult for some reason. Like, is it that one, or is that a different one?
Gosh, I don't remember it. I don't think that's it though.
Simpsons.
The one that I keep thinking of is where it's like, no, leader.
Oh, yeah. The Stonecutters. The Stonecutters one?
Oh, the Stonecutters one. Yeah, where they basically the Masons.
Yeah. Or is that is a different one? I think you're right, because I think the leader one. Yeah, yeah. Now that it's been so long since I've seen some of these Simpsons episodes.
Yeah. Well, those were the two big ones. I did watch Ex Machina again. Started watching it the night after I watched Interstellar and went, I'm too disturbed by the events of Interstellar to start down this path.
Well, I'm glad you bring up Ex Machina though, because let's look at that. Ex Machina was made probably for 1/10 of the cost of Interstellar, and survives as a superior movie because it sort of knew what its limitations were and worked very, very well within that. It was just a really killer. You could call Ex Machina hard sci-fi if we go back to that whole discussion. Some might not. I would. If you want to say, is it real sci-fi or is it more fantasy sci-fi? I think it's just straight up hard sci-fi as you would find in an Isaac Asimov book.
I think so.
But Interstellar, and granted, if Interstellar had been a series, I might be able to compare them more favorably. But it's just like you watch Interstellar, and you're like, okay, it was fine. Then you watch Ex Machina, and you're like, oh my god. And maybe that's simply because that director or that writer, we haven't seen much from them yet. So
you hit on something big there, which is they knew their limitations, and the thing was, Nolan at that moment had no limitations, and he didn't make a bad big movie. He made an amazing big movie, but it's so big that it's just too big.
Too much, yeah.
It's 3 hours long. It's got elements of every single genre in it. It's not contained. Ex Machina is such a perfect. What's it called? There's a term for a TV episode where they don't leave a room. I think it's called a bottle episode.
Mm-hmm.
And Ex Machina is just that. It's just contained to this house.
Yeah.
It starts in silence with Domhnall Gleeson's character winning some contest you don't understand.
Yep.
Next thing you know, he's on a helicopter to this remote headquarters that the eccentric genius who founded his company, where he lives. They drop him off in the woods. He has to walk to the house. The rest of the movie takes place inside that house
with 4 people, 4 characters.
And it ends with someone walking back to the helicopter and leaving the house. That's it. There's no there's one weird shot at the very end, which I honestly think they could have cut out, which is
I agree completely
in the city. But it's such an amazing, made for $15 million.
That's amazing. And most of that was just simply the CGI of the android.
Totally.
Of her. What was her name? Was her
Ava?
Ava, that's right.
AVA, yeah.
But yeah, and you throw freaking. I will, to the day I die, I will say Oscar Isaac in that movie should have won an Oscar. A, B, that should have been Lex Luthor. His character in that movie should have been Lex. If you want to talk about a modern genius CEO megalomaniac character and not the mustache twirling kind of that we used to see back in the 60s or 70s, what Oscar Isaac did in that movie was perfect.
Or not the manic Mark Zuckerberg that we got in Superman v Batman.
I don't know what that was supposed to be. I'm just and every time I say that, people are like, what would you want? I'm like, Oscar Isaac and Ex Machina. Literally just have him play that same exact character. He could literally have just put on the same costume and everything and walked onto the set of Batman v Superman. It would have been 1,000 times better. He would
have been so much scarier than Batman.
Oh God! Seriously, the scene in Ex Machina. If you haven't seen Ex Machina, there is a scene in that is terrifying, and it's the dance sequence where Oscar Isaac comes in, and you're just like, dude. And Domhnall Gleeson's face. It was mine. I'm like, what is happening right now?
And you can't. There's no way we could even spoil it by describing it.
No.
But the events that happen right before that dance happens.
Yep.
Are kind of disturbing, and it's sort of like it switches tone from oh my god, it just switches tone from this menacing to terror, just this brief fear that we've all felt being in a weird compromised position or something, which is what Domhnall Gleeson's in, and then Oscar Isaac walks in, and you don't know where he's gonna go, and he starts this choreographed dance. Which is so disturbing.
with like a weird,
Oh
like
man,
with like
it's
an Uber
disturbing.
V-neck shirt on, or like a robe with like his chest hanging
No,
out.
oh,
Like,
it's a sweatshirt that's like unzipped.
okay, yeah.
It's like he's like in a velvet sweatsuit, like lounge suit kind of thing, and it's unzipped down to his navel.
As happy-go-lucky and as charming as he is in Star Wars, he's the literal opposite in this movie. Like it's hard to know he's the same. I mean, he's the new Gary Oldman. I'm just gonna say that right now. Like that dude
man.
can shift tone and shift character. You watch him and you're like, how is this the same guy? Like you don't realize it is. Like it just physically it's the same guy, but you just can't. Like you watch Gary Oldman in any movie and it's like a different guy every goddamn time. It's like a totally different creature has emerged. And that's like, that is my favorite kind of acting. Cause it's like, you know, he can burrow deep into something and, you know, to change his tone, change his pitch, changes everything about it. It's brilliant. I mean, granted, not everybody can do that. So it's, you know, when you can and you figure that out, well on you.
Yeah.
The other thing
that was oh no, go ahead.
No,
I was going to wrap it up. You keep pinning things to it. Go for it.
No, wrap it up because this is I'll go on for another hour if we don't.
Well, those were I did watch one or two other things that don't immediately spring to mind as having something to say about them. But you had mentioned right before we started recording that you thought I was going to bring up a topic I mentioned on Twitter, and I don't know what you're talking about, so I thought let's air that.
For those of you at home, and unless you were joking, did Todd get his bike stolen this week?
Yeah, I did get my bike stolen this week. It was overdue for theft.
Stealing, for theft. My bike's been having it too well for too long. It should get stolen. Here we go.
I had two beach cruisers stolen within like. I used to have a beach cruiser stolen every year. Basically, it was how I looked at it when I moved to California. It was like, oh, they only last about 8 to 10 months,
and they get stolen.
And then I bought a really really nice one, which was possibly foolish, but I've had it for 5 years, and it was a very nice beach cruiser with gears. It was locked up. It was outside, which many people tell you is stupid, but it was still. What's so stupid is it's a beach cruiser. Yeah. It's not modular at all. No, it's not like a street bike where the front wheel like snaps off so you can leave, you know, part of it chained up and then carry the wheel into your office like you're in like Quicksilver with Kevin Bacon. It's it's like it was locked up and somebody, this is the disturbing part, had enough time in the middle of the day to unscrew the bolts, like the lug nuts on the front wheel, and just took the whole body of the bike and left me the front wheel chained up. And I'm like, you motherfucker, what are you even doing with this?
Wow.
I was so confused. And of course my reaction was I just went and unlocked the front wheel and just left it there. Like, well, if you want to come back and get the front wheel, it's yours. Because it's no use to me now.
Maybe he had unsuccessfully stolen another bike and only got the wheel. So he was like, I just need a bike body, but I've got a wheel already. I can just come and do that. That sucks, man. Like, why? Is there any possibility of? Because I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm serious about, you know, locking my bike up for the day, I have to unhook the front wheel, pair it with the back wheel, and then chain those two things together. So you didn't have that capability. Were you using like just like a regular like U-lock, or what was your?
It was a chain lock.
Okay.
But I have like one of those mega chain locks because the first two bikes I got stolen, every time I would get a thicker chain lock, and finally I got this one where the guys were like, "Yeah, I mean you can cut it, but you'd have to have some serious cutters, you know, it's like you can't get like garden shears and cut through this lock." So I have a pretty serious chain lock, but or you know, like a coil lock kind of thing, but it's pretty tough. And but yeah, so I guess it was just that was too much bother to cut that. We'd rather just sit here for 5 minutes and unscrew it, which is weird too. Like, well, did you get into my backyard? Like, did you jump over this wall with you know, like a wrench?
Oh wait, so this was at home?
Yeah, that's what's really
shit! This wasn't even at work or anything. Oh my god. Oh, that's sick.
It's a bummer. Yeah, that was not one of my prepared topics for tonight, but it did happen.
Well, scary world out there, kids. Lock your bikes up. Lock your bikes up and don't keep your camera equipment in your goddamn car. I can't tell you how many friends of mine have had their stuff stolen out of their car because they leave it visibly in the back seat or leave it in the trunk for a long period of time. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't leave your gear in your Yours is a bit more forgivable because I would have been surprised myself to on my bike.
I mean, I get it. I shouldn't have been out in the first place, but it's a cruiser. You can't hang it on the wall.
No.
It's like kind of clunky in the house. It's the handlebars are giant and wide, so I'm
makes you wonder if somebody who lives near you has it, and you're going to see it on the road sometime next week.
Just a guy doing a permanent wheelie.
Yeah.
No front wheel. Just
in Grand Theft Auto style, you're going to run up to him and just push him off the bike and take the bike.
I'll just go like, dude, you forgot the front wheel. Come get it. I'm just gonna have to throw it away. It's yours.
Well, on that note.
So next week we will tell you what the hell we've been clumsily hinting at for a few weeks now. I normally, this is the part where we say, go find us at toddandtaylor.com, but I noticed that toddandtaylor.com doesn't work, which is sort of, I thought you were moving that intentionally.
Whoa, what happened there?
Well, whatever we announce next week, a website will be involved.
Yep. A website will be involved. Todd and Taylor will be, .com. We'll give you the lay of the land next week.
ToddandTaylor.com. Keep that in mind. And whenever that starts working again, you found out the secret.
I know what happened. Okay, because I moved it all to Google.
We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. But where can people find you in the meantime if they want to chat at you and discuss your negative feelings on all Christopher Nolan movies?
Well, no.
Or if they want to argue about Gravity's worth as a sci-fi film.
That I'm happy to entertain at Taylor Trask on Twitter. That's usually me, and I say that because it's like I kind of approach Twitter like text messaging for everybody. So if you hit me up there with whatever, I will respond.
Wow, that is pretty open. I am at Hey Todd A on Twitter, and I use that block button like a son of a gun.
No, so. I'm not as popular as you yet, I guess. I'm still jonesing for anybody to hit me up. So, well, it's been. We will have to. We absolutely okay. We need to come up with a sign off for this show because like Wednesday in Westeros, we just play the music out like this. We need some kind of like chipper like. And that was funny. The day that was, whatever we come up with.
It's funny because I did think of a sign off for another thing that we're doing and typically have not given any thought to the thing that we actually do. But Taylor, I will tell you, if you're feeling like, you know what, I would just like a little palate cleanser, can I recommend Trader Joe's dark chocolate mints with a crunchy white candy shell and a pure peppermint center? They're quite refreshing. And as you know, I've ripped the part of the bag that would confirm this, but I'm just going to tell you, serving size is one bag. One entire bag.
I'm going to my local Trader Joe's now to buy my own. Thanks, Todd.
Perfect. Wash it down with a Spindrift sparkling water. And with that, we are Todd and Taylor, the Spin the Todd and Taylor Show, and we will see you sometime soon.